Look at a map of the United States today, and you'll see a perfectly connected grid. But travel back to the early 20th century, and that map looks very different. America wasn't a unified nation. It was a patchwork of disconnected towns, separated by thousands of miles of mud, rock, and dust. Driving coast to coast wasn't a family vacation. It was a hazardous, unpredictable, and entirely exhausting endeavor. To prove just how bad the situation was, the U.S. War Department launched a massive experiment. On July 7, 1919, an Army motor convoy consisting of 81 heavy motorized vehicles set out from Washington, D.C., aiming for San Francisco. The mission was simple: test if the military could quickly move across the country during a national emergency. The answer was a resounding no. The expedition was an absolute nightmare of logistics. As soon as the convoy left the paved streets of the East Coast, the heavy vehicles sank into quicksand-like mud. They continuously broke down, blew out their tires, and physically collapsed dozens of fragile wooden bridges under their immense weight. It took the convoy 62 grueling days to complete the 3,200-mile journey, crawling forward at an agonizing average speed of just 6 miles an hour. One of the Army observers covered in dirt on that miserable trip was a 28-year-old lieutenant colonel. His name was Dwight D. Eisenhower. He never forgot the nightmare of that journey, and decades later, he would use it to completely reshape the American landscape. Fast forward to World War II. Eisenhower is now a supreme commander in Europe. As Allied forces push into Germany, he witnesses something that stops him in his tracks: the German Autobahn. While American roads were still largely a tangled mess of two-lane dirt paths, Germany had built vast, smooth multi-lane concrete highways. Eisenhower saw firsthand how rapidly the enemy could mobilize troops, supply lines, and heavy armor across the country. When Eisenhower became president of the United States in the 1950s, the world had changed. The Cold War had begun, and the threat of a Soviet nuclear strike was a daily, terrifying reality. Eisenhower realized that America's outdated roads weren't just an inconvenience. They were a massive national security vulnerability. In the event of an atomic attack, major cities could not be evacuated in time, and military forces could not be deployed to defend the coasts. Because of this, the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956 wasn't originally sold to Congress as a way for families to go on summer road trips. It was presented as a matter of national survival. In fact, Congress explicitly added the word defense to its official title: the National System of Interstate and Defense Highways. Defense Department planners calculated the exact traffic volume required to evacuate a major metropolitan area before a Soviet bomber could arrive, and they designed the lanes accordingly. The entire system was engineered for war. The Defense Department mandated a strict 16-foot vertical clearance for all highway overpasses. This wasn't for commercial semi-trucks. It was specifically designed so that flatbed trailers carrying massive Atlas nuclear missiles and heavy military equipment could pass underneath without scraping the concrete. The lanes were widened to 12 feet, the curves were moderated, and the pavement was poured thick enough to support the immense weight of columns of military tanks. You may have even heard the widespread myth that the law requires 1 out of every 5 miles of the interstate to be perfectly straight so airplanes can land on it. While that specific 1 in 5 rule is an urban legend with no basis in the actual design manuals, the military intent behind the highway's massive scale and its ability to act as emergency runways in a crisis was absolutely real. With the funding secured, America went to work. The construction of the Interstate Highway System became the largest public works project in human history. It was an engineering marvel that dwarfed the building of the Panama Canal and the Hoover Dam combined. Armies of men in hard hats deployed across the nation. They drained swamps in the Deep South, bridged massive rivers, and laid millions of tons of iron rebar. The geographical nightmares they faced were staggering. Take Interstate 70 through Glenwood Canyon in Colorado, for example. Engineers had to figure out how to squeeze a four-lane highway through a narrow, twisting mountain gorge without destroying it. It took 12 years and nearly $500 million just to build a 12-mile stretch. They literally had to suspend the westbound lanes on a viaduct above the canyon floor, while cantilevering the eastbound lanes directly over the rushing waters of the Colorado River. The federal government footed 90% of the bill, funded heavily by a new highway trust fund that collected taxes on gasoline. They poured over 400 million cubic yards of concrete, enough to build a sidewalk to the moon and back. To make sense of this massive web of concrete, engineers designed a brilliant hidden code that most drivers today still don't fully understand. Have you ever wondered why highways have the numbers they do? The interstate system follows a strict, predictable grid. Routes with odd numbers, like I-95 or I-5, run strictly north and south. Routes with even numbers, like I-80 or I-10, run east and west. Furthermore, the odd numbers begin low on the west coast and get higher as you move east. The even numbers start low in the south and get higher as you drive north. And if you see a three-digit highway, like a 285 or a 495, that is a beltway designed to carry traffic in a loop entirely around a major city. It was a masterpiece of logistical planning, but it was about to do far more than just organize traffic. It was about to change the American way of life. The Interstate Highway System didn't just connect America. It completely reinvented American culture. As the ribbons of concrete stretched outward, they birthed the classic American road trip. Suddenly, average middle-class families could load up their station wagons and safely explore the entire continent in a matter of days instead of weeks. This new mobility spawned entire industries overnight. The fast food empire was built on the backs of hungry highway travelers. Roadside diners flourished, and when a businessman became frustrated with the inconsistent quality of mom-and-pop roadside motels, he used the new highway network to launch a standardized, reliable chain called the Holiday Inn. Most importantly, the interstate allowed citizens to move out of crowded city centers, giving rise to the modern American suburb. The decentralized, automobile-dependent metropolis became a reality. But the greatest engineering feat in history did not come without a heavy, often devastating price. As these massive multi-lane concrete structures were pushed directly into the hearts of America's oldest cities, city planners rarely routed them through wealthy suburbs. Instead, they weaponized eminent domain to drive these superhighways straight through vibrant, working-class, and predominantly minority neighborhoods, targeting communities they believed lacked the political power to fight back. In St. Paul, Minnesota, the construction of I-94 ripped a trench straight through Rondo, a thriving African-American middle-class neighborhood, displacing over 600 families and 300 local businesses. In Detroit, a historic and culturally rich district known as Black Bottom was completely wiped off the map to make way for the Chrysler Freeway. Entire communities were physically severed in half or bulldozed into dust. It is the darkest legacy of the interstate system, a permanent reminder that progress often requires someone else to pay the toll. Today, the interstate highway system is the literal circulatory system of the United States. While it makes up roughly 1% of the nation's total highway mileage, it carries nearly a quarter of all the roadway traffic in the country. It moves our freight, connects our families, and sustains our massive economy. The next time you merge onto the highway, look at the wide lanes, the gentle curves, and the massive overpasses. You aren't just driving on asphalt. You are riding on a massive Cold War shield that fundamentally changed how we live, how we eat, and who we are. The interstate shifted the foundation of the country. Do you remember what your town looked like before the highway arrived? Or perhaps you remember your family's very first major road trip? Tell us your story in the comments below. We read every single one. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden history of how America was built.